Did you know that two of the most iconic companies of recent times, Kodak and Skype, suffered such a dramatic downfall that no one saw it coming? Today, we're going to talk about how these giants of the past failed to adapt to technological and market changes, and how other, more agile companies ended up taking over the spaces they once dominated. Before smartphones and social media, Kodak was practically synonymous with photography, and Skype was the pioneer of voice calls over the internet. But over time, both companies saw their glory fade in the face of new competitors who knew how to adapt much better to market shifts. Today, companies like Apple Inc., WhatsApp, Zoom, and Google dominate the communication and photography markets. So what happened to Kodak and Skype? How did these market leaders become symbols of decline? Let's find out. Kodak was founded in 1888 and dominated the photography market for decades. Who doesn't remember the famous phrase, "You press the button, we do the rest"? The concept was simple and brilliant: to democratize photography. Kodak pioneered making photography accessible to the average consumer. With its cameras and films, Kodak became a name synonymous with capturing memories, from special occasions to everyday moments. But despite its decades of success, Kodak failed to anticipate a coming revolution: digital photography. In the 1990s, Kodak made a crucial discovery. They were developing digital camera technology. In fact, Kodak was one of the first companies to create digital camera sensors. But what happened next would seal its fate. Kodak didn't want to abandon its traditional film business. The company was too comfortable with its existing business model and didn't invest enough in the digital revolution. As digital cameras gained traction through brands like Canon Inc. and Sony Group Corporation, Kodak tried to cling to an outdated model instead of embracing change. And then what happened? Companies like Canon, Nikon Corporation, and Apple began integrating digital cameras into compact devices and smartphones, forever changing the market. Kodak's reluctance to adapt costed its leadership, and it was left behind. Kodak tried to reinvent itself with printers, but the transition was slow and poorly executed. It couldn't compete with companies like Apple, Google, and Instagram, which dominated the market with simple, fully digital ways to capture, edit, and share photos. In the early 2000s, Kodak was worth approximately US $31 billion on the stock market and controlled nearly 90% of the photographic film market in the United States. Less than 12 years later, in January 2012, the company filed for bankruptcy, and its market value had plummeted to less than US $200 million. This means that, in just over a decade, Kodak evaporated more than US $28 billion in market value, virtually everything it had built in over 130 years of history. And the most absurd thing? The technology that caused all this destruction was invented by Kodak itself back in 1975 with the world's first digital camera. Now, let's talk about another giant of the past, Skype. Launched in 2003, Skype changed the way the world communicated. It was one of the first platforms to offer free voice and video calls over the internet. It was revolutionary. Skype quickly became the go-to tool for voice and video communication, especially for people separated by distance. It stood out for its simplicity, call quality, and innovation for its time. But what happened to Skype? The world changed, and so did consumers. The rise of smartphones brought new ways to communicate. WhatsApp, for example, integrated free voice and video calls directly on people's phones. Skype began losing ground to faster, more integrated competitors. On top of that, platforms like Zoom and Microsoft Teams began to dominate the video conferencing market, especially during the 2020 pandemic. They offered more features and better integration with productivity apps, leaving Skype behind. While Kodak and Skype were surpassed, companies like Apple, WhatsApp, Zoom, and Google not only survived but thrived, dominating photography and communication markets. They understood consumer behavior shifts and adapted quickly. These companies understood that technology never stands still. Constant innovation, user experience focus, and rapid adaptation to market needs were the keys that kept them at the forefront. The story of Kodak and Skype teaches us an important lesson. No company, no matter how powerful, is immune to obsolescence if it fails to adapt. Innovation is the key to success in the business world. In the end, staying ahead means listening to market signals and anticipating change. So, did you like this video? Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. And tell us, which company do you think might be the next giant to fall for not adapting to new technologies? Leave your opinion in the comments.